So today's guest in the Reading Corner is artist and picture book creator Petr Horacek. Now, Petr was born in Czechoslovakia, just outside Prague, which is now in the Czech Republic, but he lives in the UK. He has a Master of Fine Arts degree from the Academy of Fine Arts in Prague, and he started creating picture books inspired by his children when they were young. His first picture book, A House for Mouse, was published in 2004. And since then, he's published many board and picture books that have become staples of the nursery and the classroom, including Silly Susie Goose, My Elephant, Puffin Peter, The Fly, The Greedy Goat, The Mouse Who Wasn't Scared. And today we're going to be talking about a new book, A Best Friend for Bear. So welcome, Petr. And I wonder if to start, you could tell us a little bit about Best Friend for Bear. What's it all about?
Well, it's my very first book about bear, which is very strange because I really like drawing bears. So it's a book about friendship. It's also a book about how we often can miss things which are right in front of our nose, how we can't see what's in front of us.
It's about two bears, isn't it? They look very similar, apart from their colour, same height. How did you go about developing them as characters?
Usually, I would draw the main character and then cut it out. I use collage a lot. So I would cut out the main character and then I paint the background. The collage allows me to kind of loose up and be kind of free and being a little bit messy, perhaps printing the texture and stuff like that. And at the end, I glue in the main character into the picture. So when I tried this, it really didn't work because bears are hairy and they really needed to be big part of the surrounding environment and stuff. So the collage didn't work because they look really stiff and clumsy. So I get very often inspired by materials, lots of different materials. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It could be very cheap oil pastels and color pencils, wax crayons. So I started to use oil pastels and scratch at the side of the brush into the bears just to make them a little bit more hairy and textured. And that worked. And I started to illustrate the book this way. But I've been through, maybe I already done about half of the book and realized that the pictures are actually quite boring. They are missing something. So I stepped back and started again. And this time I took a paper which is very shiny. So you can smudge the oil pastels and the acrylic doesn't dry so quickly. So I use a different paper and I scratch into it and I print it. And with that, the characters of bear change as well. They are, I would say, maybe a little bit more simple in the shape. And yes, once I find out the right technique I want to use, then I was there. I felt really comfortable with the bears, and now I really love to do them again and again.
Before we leave bears completely, it won't have escaped listeners' notice that when I read the list of your books, every single one of them had an animal in it. Why do you think animals are so great for children's books? And do you think it's a cultural thing, or is it the same the whole world over?
I think I would say it's a whole world over because children can identify with animals easily, with the characters. And so do I, actually. And I think it gives me more freedom, really. I mean, I can draw people. I studied fine art and I spent many years doing life drawing, and I can draw people. But actually doing a child or adult into the book, it's a little bit different. I'm always struggling with that. So I'm more comfortable to draw bear than a little boy or little girl. And it gives me more freedom. You can really use the expressions differently. And
you are the only picture book creator I know that's ever made me feel any empathy for a fly.
Kind of forgotten, really. It's interesting as well because my publisher said to me, look, we will do the book, but people won't buy it. People don't want to buy books about flies. And they were quite right, really. The book I don't think it's definitely not my bestseller. But whenever I show the book anywhere, if I take it to schools, children always like the book and we always have a good laugh about it. So I'm glad we did that.
Mm. Let's have a look inside. So it's a black bear and a brown bear. They're feeling very lonely. They both wish they had a friend and they agree to go off together searching for friends.
Did you actually notice that the brown bear, it's actually on the spread number 2 already? You can see him walking in the background in the woods.
In the corner. Finding a friend is not easy. And there, through the trees in a clearing, we see the tiny brown bear in the distance. Before we move on any further into the book, actually, I want to talk about this wonderful landscape. So some of your books have quite a plain white background. I think Silly Susie Goose was a very pared back background, wasn't it? And here we had a really rich forest, a little bit like in The Mouse Who Wasn't Scared, again, a very kind of rich forest background. I wondered whether you were inspired, because I think around sort of the area that you were born and come from, you know, these European forests, the Czech forest. Are you inspired by that?
Definitely. I try to always make time in autumn, and I go back to Czech Republic. I stay in the cottage which belongs to my friends, and it's their summer cottage. They don't live there. It's a beautiful place in the middle of nowhere on the hill. You can see whole country in front of you, and right behind the cottage, well, you actually step into the woods. And I spent a couple of weeks there every autumn on my own. I paint in the woods. I do landscape just to paint for myself. And, you know, so you spend hours just standing in the woods and painting on canvas, and things come into you, you know, into your head. And I think about stories. I go for a walk, and then in the evening I would write it down and make notes. I don't always come back with a finished book, but I always gather enough ideas and sketches to work with through the year. In fact, it getting to the point that my publisher was saying, can we do something outside of the woods now? Can
I just ask, you talked about painting outside. How does that make you feel that's different, say, to walking and then going back and painting indoors? How does it make you feel?
It's something you really can't replace. I keep saying that if ever I do talk to students of illustration or somebody who's interested about doing books. So I always say everything I learn about drawing, I learn from life drawing. And everything I learn about color, I learn from landscape. Being outside painting, you can't cheat that, because you're looking at one place for a couple of hours. You know the place through the day into every single detail, and you notice color, you see the color, how it's changing. You know, I come home into the studio and paint a tree, and I know the tree's got brown trunk and green branches, but it's not like that when you are in the woods. You know that there is blue, there is purple, there is red, there is lots of colors. And these are things which you can appreciate only if you observe it closely. So these things are very important, and it's very meditative. It's really, it calms you down. Things start happening around you. Animals will come to you, and if you don't move, you can see a deer. You know, it's really, really great. I wish I could do it more often.
Sounds magical. And we are looking here at a spread of the forest and the variety of colour, because I think children often are taught stereotypical things about colour. You know, the leaves are green, the trees are green, the grass is green. But as you've already said, when you look in nature, you can find just about any colour of leaf.
That's the thing, that's the mistake we do to children, don't we? We teach them, we tell them, did you know the grass is green? And do you know that tree is green and sky is blue? And the children then repeat what we told them. And if the child looks closely, she or he can see that the sky it's actually pink, or the sky is gray, the sky is silver, whatever, and the grass isn't always green. You know, but that's the damage we do to children, telling them what to think. all we have to do is just give children freedom to help them to be creative. Let them learn themselves instead of telling them what to do and what to think. So
your work is always so beautifully textured as well. And you've talked a little bit about how you got the texture for your bears. The trees here, are we looking at mainly printed work?
Yeah, I think I start painting with acrylic, the background. For the bear, I use a little bit of watercolor and then oil pastel over it, and then scratching into the fur of the bear. But for the background, I started with acrylic paint, and then I scratch into polystyrene sheets, and I print the texture of the trees over the trunks of the trees. And then also I have a textured papers which I print and scratch, and I collage some of the branches. So there's no computer involved. It's everything painted and collaged.
Talk a little bit about composition as well. Maybe tell me a page to go to from a composition point of view.
I mean, I
love this one.
When they're looking in the quarry or something, I was trying to really fit it into the story. In fact, I was recently going through the sketches, and some of the sketches were probably a little bit more interesting than the final drawing. But I didn't. They were more interesting because of the scale. I made the bears much smaller in the sketches, but it somehow didn't fit into the big book. So then I made them a little bit bigger. But there are two bears. They're holding her hands. It's about a trust as well. So the black bear is looking down into the
like a chasm, isn't it? Like a canyon or a chasm.
Yeah, and looking for a friend, and the brown bear holding his hand. So it's all about them actually trusting to each other, helping each other. And you can see that there is a lot of light behind them, but actually they came from this dark wood and stuff. So, I think it's a little bit dramatic, maybe a little bit dangerous, but feeling safe at the same time, because as I said, they're trusting each other, they are together, they're helping each other.
I also love the way that you've made the trees lean in, sort of pulling us into that.
Yes. Well, you see, I think partly this is something I think I learn in painting outside, learn about the composition in the picture. I can't stress this more, how important it is to be, to draw outside, to draw from nature and learn from nature. It's very difficult to invent in the studio.
I mean, they start playing hide and seek with each other, don't they? I think there's one point where our feeling about what's going on in this image is really conveyed by your change of palette at this point.
Yeah, that's actually interesting, because I don't know, when I was doing the book, it didn't seem to me so dramatic, but once you finish the artwork and it goes to the publisher to be printed, you actually don't see the artwork for 10, maybe sometimes for a year. And suddenly the book came, and I opened the book, and although I liked the picture, I was quite surprised how it's a little bit sad. It is quite more dramatic than I remember this picture to be, because he really looks confused and a little bit upset. And also the colors suddenly change, the color in the book. There is more gray, there is not very happy colors, there's not these really, really bright colors. So it's quite atmospheric. And I was quite surprised how it was slightly different from what I remembered. But I think it fits with the story, because he is, at this point, he is quite low because he can't find his friend.
Do some of those changes take place at the design point? I mean, do things like colours get changed in the design process?
Yeah, I think the colour for me is very important. And whenever I sketch any book, I make the thumbnails in colours, just to be sure that the book has a rhythm, not just in the text and the story, of course, that's something which has to be there, but also in color. So I like the pictures to have a rhythm through the book as well. This book was slightly different because the bears are spending lots of time in woods and meadows, and the green is the color. But even then I would play with different colors of the sky. I mean, the color in the picture is very important to me. I mean, there is a book called Puffin Peter I did some time ago, and that was a book where I was really really sure that the book works well in color. So I think it's one of the books where the rhythm of the color, it's through whole book. I'm quite happy with that.
You've talked about painting in the wild. Do you also carry a sketchbook for drawing?
Through the day, I don't actually. I look a lot, but I'm not one of the illustrators who always has a sketchbook with them. I draw. I've got a little sketchbook, small A6 sketchbooks in my studios, which whenever I illustrate book, I would grab these small sketchbooks, and I will make a note. I will make a quick drawing of funny, just to kind of relax, So I have many little sketchbooks with funny pictures, with complete nonsense, could be dream, but I keep them in the studio. When I travel, I may occasionally write something down, but I don't do the observations drawings with me. I know I should, but I just don't do that.
If I were to push you and say, what would it be hardest to live without? A pencil or paint and brushes? What would you say?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. It's a very different experience. I would probably choose pencil because you can paint with pencil. But there are very two different things. Drawing, it's your brain. Painting, it's very physical. Well, at least for me, it's kind of. I remember once I had an operation of my arm. I was quite young, and it was my right arm. I'm right-handed, and I couldn't paint. And I was so frustrated. I remember going into my studio just to sit there, and then I tried to paint, and I had to hold my arm with the left hand, and I tried to paint, and the picture wasn't. It just didn't work because I had no strength in it, and it hurt. And it was, even though I managed to do something, I wasn't satisfied. So it's really, really physical. It's some connection in your brain.
It's very interesting because I think people think it's an eye to brain thing, but actually you probably use your whole body when you're painting.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, it's kind of gives you really good feeling when the paint kind of smudges over the paper, and I very often paint with my fingers as well, and print and collage, cut with a knife. It's like another drawing when you cut into the paper.
Yeah. I mean, as well as picture books like this one here, you created quite a few board books for very young readers. And I think they often don't get that much attention, board books. But to create one, it's not just about putting a picture book story into a board book. I mean, that's the worst possible thing I think you could do. So how is it different creating a good board book?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the board books because they are really forgotten. It's very difficult to see really good board books. I really don't like lazy board books when you open it and there is a flower and here's a cow and here's a ball and here's a teddy bear, and that's it, you close the book. I think it's very lazy because children are not stupid. They really deserve a good story where, you are limited with pages. You've got 6 or 7 double spreads, but it is possible to get a simple story into the board books. One of my board books, which I'm proud of, I would probably say the Run, Mouse, Run, which you can chase the mouse through the book, and there are holes in the pages and cut out pages, so the mouse it's climbing up the table, and maybe when you turn the page you're actually holding the mouse, and then the mouse runs into the hole and the cut it's coming. So you actually can fit a basic story into 6 spreads. And so doing board books like this, introducing actually children to books this way, it's very, very important, because I keep saying that the picture book or board book, actually, it's the first time that the child is confronted with visual art and literature. And the other day I was talking with Chris Horton, and he added that actually it's the first time when the child is introduced to drama art as well, because it's so important the way how you read a book. As a parent, the way how you deliver the story, it's so important to the child, and he's absolutely right. So, and the board books, it's for very little children. So yeah, I think it should be done properly.
You did one, Strawberries Are Red?
Well, yes, that's right. Strawberries Are Red and What is Black and White were my very first books. They were published in 2001. I get an award for it, a Newcomer 2001. So that's how my career started, with these two board books. And since then, I think I did about 17 of these board books. Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. I read recently, and I don't know why I hadn't put two and two together, but one of your favourite illustrators is one of mine as well. And I don't think we've ever talked about it, so I did want to mention it. I think you're a fan of Květa Pakowska.
Yeah, Květa Pakowska, absolutely. She's actually a brilliant illustrator. But also she's mainly really fine artist. She does a beautiful paintings and installations. And so she's incredibly interesting artist. Obviously, she lives in Czech Republic. She always lived there, but her books were published mainly in Switzerland during the communism. So she was famous everywhere else, but not in Czech Republic as much as she should be. So yeah, no, absolutely. She's stunning.
She actually won the Hans Andersen Award for her work. And, we can get some of her books, but not as many.
They get published in England now, aren't they? Yeah.
Some of them. Okay. I suppose it's really interesting because, like you, she has a fine art background. What is the connection between fine art and illustrating for children? I think it's quite I think about Laura Carlin as well. I just think it's really interesting, that connection and how you can bring that to your work.
Well, when I used to paint, when I used to do my abstract paintings, I always had a story in it, although nobody would guess what the story is. And in fact, I sometimes look at my abstract paintings, remembering that I did lots of drawings, abstract paintings, and thinking, I remember how strong I feel about this picture, but actually I don't remember what is it about anymore. But actually kind of daydreaming, being involved with the picture, it's always there. I always liked making up stories since I was little. So I think understand the materials, understand the color, maybe understand the composition. That's something you can bring into picture book quite easily, and it's very useful. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, lots of people who do art, many of them won't be able to do picture books for the different reason. I think being able to identify with the age you are writing for and stuff, which is so important, and it's not something you can learn easily.
Really interesting. I mean, you're known for both writing and illustrating your own books, but you did do a book with Nicola Davies a while ago, the first book of Animals, which is a non-fiction book. How was that different, working as part of a team?
Oh, it was one of the best things I've done in my career as a writer and illustrator, because first of all, Nicola is so enthusiastic about nature, about many things, but she understands animals. She's so passionate about it. And I was asked if I would like to illustrate her books. I just thought, well, am I the right person to do that? And I went to the meeting and I was giving the texts, which were poems about animals. And I look at it and I felt so excited about it that on the way home, I actually started to read the poems more carefully, and I started to sketch into the papers I was given. And the other day I looked at it and I realized that my first sketches, which I've done on the train, actually hardly change into the final picture. Because it was so visual. I could see what I want to do straight away. And later on, I talked to Nicola about some of the pictures, and just listening to her, what she has to say about each animal. And it was really, really inspirational to work with Nicola. And also, what was great about this book was that there's no continuity. I could treat every picture differently, because it was different animal. One of them was in the water, one of them was flying, and I could use watercolors, acrylic paint, I could print. Some of them are more realistic than others. And I had so much fun and so much freedom that I enjoy every minute of it. Absolutely love that.
How wonderful. There is a panda in that book.
Yeah.
Is there a bear?
There is a polar bear.
There's a polar bear.
We have a
so
polar
not
bear.
quite. These are not quite your first bears.
Well, as I say, I have a bear in the book before A Best Friend for Bear. It was the best place in the world. Unfortunately, quite similar titles. But the best place in the world, there is a bear as well, actually, on the cover and on 2 pictures inside. But what I meant was that I never had a bear as a main character in the book.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a delight talking to you today and catching up with you. I absolutely love this story. And I know so many young readers, their parents and their teachers are going to love it too. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. It was lovely talking to you.
In the Reading Corner is presented by Nikki Gamble and produced by Alison Hughes. This episode is generously sponsored by Walker Books. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. If you would like to find out about other events and courses, visit justimagine.co.uk. Join us again in the Reading Corner on your favourite podcast platform.